Pertinacity or diligence or industriousness. Pertinacity means industriousness, means hard work. So opposite of dilatoriness is pertinacity. And its dilatoriness has nothing to do with being diluted either. So I think, oh, diluted, somehow it means corrupt. So the opposite, piety or purity, probably, no, that's not true. So don't fall into these traps. And it's not short-sightedness either. So you think dilatoriness, maybe your pupils get dilated and you see far or something. The opposite must be short-sightedness. Don't fall into such traps. Dilatoriness is laziness, and pertinacity is diligence or hard work. Eccentric. So it's quite a common word. I mean, we all have heard of this word, right? Eccentric, something crazy, unusual, abnormal. And 4 options: customary, mundane, linchpin, and anomalous. So we all know an anomaly is like an outlier, something wrong. So it sounds similar to eccentric. So anomalous cannot be the opposite, ruled out. So mundane means something routine. That could be a possible option. Linchpin. That's probably not going to have anything to do with eccentric. So customary means normal. That's the custom. That's the way it's done. Nothing unusual or eccentric. Customary. So eccentric, opposite is customary. Wasted. Wasted means inebriated, drunk. So the 4 options: intoxicated, elegant, helpful, sober. So if you know what it means, drunk, opposite is sober. Welch. To welch is to recant or renege or to go back on one's promise. So 4 options: fulfill, renege, invite, or hope. Welch and renege are synonyms, in fact, same meaning. Opposite of welch is to fulfill or to honor one's commitment. So you recant, opposite is fulfill. Salubrious. So 4 options are precarious, choppy, noxious, and opposite. So salubrious means something pleasant or nutritious, and opposite is noxious or dangerous. Opposite is noxious or like dangerous. So salubrious, the way I would think about it is, think of like say one of your favorite Bollywood actors, say Salman Khan. So let's think you're walking about like with Salman Khan in the breeze. Say Salu in the breeze. What does it? It gives you a feeling of pleasantness, right? That's the way I remember it, okay? It works for me. Just find some technique, however stupid it might be, to help you remember these words, okay? So when I look at the word salubrious, I think about walking with Salu in the breeze. So it's kind of salubrious, present. That's the way I remember it, and it works for me. And opposite of salubrious is noxious or like dangerous, right? So I would pick this. Retrograde. So the moment you look at this word, there is like a negative connotation to it. Retrogress or retrograde means something that's related to destruction. So retrograde is like destructive or something that's failing. So the opposite is progressive. So the moment I look at it, I think I can figure out the option as progressive, the opposite. It's nothing to do with proactive either. So don't get confused with that. Proactive and like reactive. Proactive means when you take precaution to prevent something, and reactive is when you do it like after it has happened. So opposite of retrograde is progressive. Blossom. To blossom is to flower, flourish, bloom, succeed. 4 options: feather, root, wither, agitate. So blossom can also be a noun. So it can either be a verb or a noun. So in this context, it's used as a verb. To blossom, to flourish, to succeed. Opposite is to wither or to fail, to dry up or to fail. So if a blossom is a flower, you might be inclined to think the opposite is like the root, but that's not true. The opposite is not to agitate either. To blossom, the opposite is to wither, to fail. Circumscribe. The 4 options are enunciate, divide, inscribe, emancipate. So circumscribe means, it means to confine or to limit. So the way I would remember it is, we all know, like for circles, like in our high school geometry, we learned about, the circumference. And, for a triangle, we would draw the circumcircle and the incircle, remember? So circumscribe means to draw a circumference around someone, means like you limit them to this. So it means to confine someone to the space, to limit. Opposite is to emancipate or to liberate. So remember, emancipate sounds like emaciated. Emaciated means very weak and thin. But emancipate means to liberate. Okay? So think about like Mahatma Gandhi. Okay? Gandhi, he was emaciated. When he went on all those fasts, like, he went on all these hunger strikes and, he wanted to fast unto death. He was emaciated, weak. But he also emancipated India from British rule. So emancipate means to liberate. Circumscribe means to confine. So don't be tempted to pick circumscribe opposite as inscribe. No. Circumscribe opposite is to emancipate. Velvety. 4 options: penurious, genuine, thorny, and opulent. So the moment you think about velvet, what do you think of? Something soft, luxurious, shiny, rich. That's what you think about, right? When you think of velvet. So the opposite is penurious or poor. Penurious can mean kind of stingy. It also means like poor. It's something to do with poverty. So opposite of velvety is like well-to-do, moneyed, and the opposite would be like penurious. So don't be tempted to pick thorny. So don't think velvety is smooth and soft, and so the opposite must be thorny or pricky. That's not true. Opposite of velvety is penurious. So velvety also somehow, you might be inclined to think that velvety means like someone who is smooth talking and being cunning or something, but it's nothing like that. And the opposite you might pick genuine, but that's not true. Velvety means rich, and the opposite is penurious, something to do with poor. Carnal. Opposite, well, there's 4 options: stationary, fantastic, spiritual, and successful. Carnal means related to physical pleasures. Carnal is anything to do with physical, okay? The mere physical or sexual, something like that. And the opposite is spiritual. Something that transcends the mere physical is spiritual. So the opposite is not fantastic, it's nothing to do with success. Carnal is at the base physical level, opposite is spiritual. Chimerical. Chimerical and the 4 options: nectarious, phlegmatic, perceptible, inadequate. So chimerical means illusory, fantasy. It's like a fantasy, something unreal. So the chimera was like some kind of a mythical beast or something like that. So chimerical means illusory, something in fantasy, it's not real. Opposite is real, perceptible. Something which you can perceive is perceptible. Nectarious means sweet. Phlegmatic means slow. So chimerical is something in your fantasy, and perceptible means real. So that's how you pick the opposite. Chivalrous. 4 options are nonchalant, surreptitious, profound, and gigantic. Chivalrous means gentlemanly, caring, kind. I think most of you know the meaning of chivalrous: to be courteous, polite, kind. And the opposite is nonchalant or insensitive. Nonchalant is like when you're indifferent, you don't care. Surreptitious is like, when you do it in a sly, stealthy way. And profound means deep, and gigantic means big. But chivalrous is like courteous, polite. Nonchalant is indifferent. So those are the opposites. Rambunctious. 4 options: baneful, taciturn, effervescent, and resilient. Rambunctious means noisy, talkative. Opposite is taciturn or silent. So baneful. So boon opposite is bane. Baneful is something destructive. Resilient is like when you have a failure and you bounce back up. That is resilient. Effervescent is something that gives out a lot of like bubbles, and like baking soda. When you add soda to water, it effervesces, right? Or like Coca-Cola. It causes effervescence, bubbles. So rambunctious is like noisy and talkative, and the opposite is taciturn or quiet. Triumphant. We all know what that is. Triumph means success. Triumphant means successful. Opposite, we have 4 options: officious, ridiculous, abortive, and offensive. So, officious is nothing to do with an office. Officious means meddlesome, interfering. Ridiculous means, we all know what ridiculous is, and it's not the opposite of successful. Offensive. Offensive is when you make someone angry or when you offend someone. That's not the opposite of being successful. Well, to be successful, you must take care not to offend too many people, but then that's not the opposite of being successful. So triumphant, opposite is abortive. To abort is to fail, right? So triumphant, abortive. Fractious. 4 options: headstrong, monolithic, wholesome, and delightful. So fractious means, so the moment you think about it, it's like a fraction of something. It has a negative connotation to it. So you know that the word is something negative. So even if you've never heard of this word before, the moment you see fractious, you will see there is a negative term to it. So it actually means grouchy and cross and angry. So fractious, the opposite would be something positive. So it would be either, let's say, wholesome or delightful. I would think about these 2 options. So delightful and cheerful, that's the opposite of cross, grouchy, and angry. Opposite is delightful. So wholesome is more like nutritious and something that's advantageous. That's not the opposite of being grouchy and cross. So cheerful, delightful is the opposite. So between these 2, you pick delightful. So that's how you progressively eliminate options. So the moment you see fractious, the opposite of fractious, headstrong, I would rule that out immediately, because this has a negative connotation. This we know is a negative word. So 2 negatives cannot be opposite of each other. So rule out headstrong. And then, sorry. So then there is monolithic. So somehow fractious seems like it's a piece of something. It's a fraction of something. You might be inclined to think. And you might think, monolithic it's like a big structure made of 1 stone. Monolithic, So you might think, mono is like 1 single thing. Fractious means it looks like it's divided into many fractions. So you might be inclined to think that opposite of fractious is monolithic, but it isn't. So opposite of fractious is delightful. Unsung. The 4 options are melodious, lionized, cheerful, and talented. So unsung means uncelebrated, unknown, unacclaimed. It's like the unsung hero. Like suppose there was a soldier who went to battle and he laid down his life for the country, but nobody ever wrote about him in the newspapers, nobody made a movie about him. He died unsung. Means nobody wrote a song in his honor. That's what it means. The opposite is lionized, or renowned, or praised. So opposite of unsung is lionized. So between melodious, lionized, cheerful, and talented. So the moment you see unsung, you might think it's something to do with a song. And you might think, oh, unsung means maybe somebody who doesn't know how to sing, or maybe who doesn't sing well. And you might think the opposite is melodious, oh, someone who sings well. That's not true. And you might think unsung means maybe someone who doesn't know how to sing, so they're sad, and the opposite sounds like cheerful. That's not true either. Or you might think unsung is someone who doesn't know how to sing, and the opposite is talented, or one who sings. That's not true either. Unsung is one who dies uncelebrated. Like, unsung means not necessarily when you die, but someone who doesn't get enough praise or recognition. Unsung. One who is not honored. Opposite is lionized, one who is renowned and praised. The next word is cause. And the four options are repetition, success, effect, and termination. So the opposite of cause is effect. So the cause is to be the reason for something to happen. And the effect is the outcome. I mean, what is the end result? The cause and effect are opposites. Next, antonym. So indicted. It's not indicted but indicted. Four options: valiant, deliberate, impeccant, and ambiguous. Indicted means guilty or convicted or accused. So opposite is impeccant or innocent. So indicted somehow sounds like convicted, and it actually means convicted, and it's nothing to do with valiant or, being timid, and it's nothing to do with ambiguous. Ambiguous means unclear or clear, nothing to do with that. Deliberate or accidental, nothing to do with that. Impeccant means innocent. Innocent, opposite guilty. Wean. Four options: include, aggregate, exhume, and applaud. Wean means to decrease or to reduce. And the opposite is to aggregate or increase. So we've all heard of, waxing and waning of the moon. So the moon, for the first 15 days of the month, 14 days usually, let's say it keeps increasing in size. And after the full moon, it weans or it decreases in size. So waxing is increasing and waning is decreasing. So the opposite of wean is to decrease, and the opposite is aggregate or to increase. So it's nothing to do with applaud or praise or anything. Decrease, and the opposite is aggregate or increase. Prevenient. Four options: realistic, modern, urgent, and inconvenient. So prevenient means archaic or antique. Prevenient is nothing to do with convenient. So this was just to confuse people. So the moment they see prevenient, they think, oh, it probably means convenient, and the opposite must be inconvenient. That's not true, so don't fall into these traps. Prevenient means archaic, ancient, and the opposite is modern. So sometimes look at the four options, okay, and think about the opposites of each of these options, and think if any of them could possibly be the meaning of that word. So when you look at urgent, let's say you've never heard of this word prevenient before, okay? And now you're looking at these four options. Let's look at realistic. So what is the opposite of realistic? Something that's impractical, or something that's like illusory, like a fantasy, right? Does prevenient sound like a fantasy? Probably not. Does it mean something prevenient, okay? Does it mean something like impractical? Probably, I don't know. So, say modern. Opposite is ancient, right? Antique. So, prevenient, does it mean antique? It's like pre, right? So, pre means something that happened long ago or before. So it could mean something old or antique. So that's an option. So urgent, the opposite of urgent is something that's not urgent, or like, something that's unimportant. So does prevenient seem like it's not important? No, actually it sounds like the opposite of that. The moment it's like prevenient, it's like something like predominant or it somehow seems, it has a sense of urgency to it, it doesn't look like it's not important. So I would rule out urgent. And inconvenient, you might be tempted to pick this. Prevenient sounds like convenient, and this opposite, you might be tempted to pick inconvenient, but that's not true. So prevenient means antique, and the opposite is modern. Sometimes if you come across something that sounds very easy, it may be a trap. So watch out for traps. Refractory. 4 options: penitent, straightforward, ambitious, and pliable. Refractory means stubborn, headstrong. Opposite is pliable, yielding, manageable. So remember, refractory is nothing to do with a factory, nothing to do with refraction or diffraction, which is like, the bending of light, like when you put a pencil in water, it looks bent because light travels across two different media of two different density, right? Water and air. So it makes the object look bent. So that is refraction. But refractory is nothing to do with refraction. Refractory means stubborn, headstrong. And the opposite of that is pliable. So we all know what a plier is, like something used to bend and manage things, right? Penitent is like when you're repenting for something. Straightforward is more like honest and candid. And ambitious is like, when you want to achieve something. But opposite of refractory is pliable. Lassitude. 4 options are longitude, talent, fairness, and vivacity. So lassitude sounds like latitude, and you might be tempted to pick longitude, but I would probably guess that lassitude must be very different from like a latitude. So anyway, I would rule out longitude. The moment I see this, I would rule it out. So lassitude sounds somewhat like laziness, and it actually means laziness, lack of energy. So lassitude is laziness, and the opposite of that is vivacity or vigor, energetic. So it's nothing to do with talent, nothing to do with being fair or unfair. Vivacity is vigor, and the opposite is laziness or lassitude. Mettlesome. Mettlesome means courageous, lively. 4 options: easy, recreant, adorable, and fluent. So mettlesome is someone who has mettle, like something like courage, courageous, lively. So opposite is recreant or cowardly. So mettlesome is nothing to do with being meddlesome, or it's nothing to do with being difficult. Mettlesome means courageous. Think of mettlesome as like someone who has a medal, someone who's courageous, okay? And the opposite is cowardly or recreant. Audacious. 4 options: serious, officious, gruesome, abstemious. Audacious means gluttonous or greedy. Opposite is abstemious, frugal, thrifty. So abstemious means when you're frugal, thrifty, and you're not indulging in extravagance. So opposite of audacious is abstemious. It's nothing to do with officious being meddlesome, or nothing to do with gruesome, which is like gruesome is something abhorrent, like something bizarre. Nothing to do with that. Audacious, opposite is abstemious. So gluttonous, greedy, and thrifty. Greedy, opposite is thrifty. Wishy-washy. So wishy-washy means like dull, insipid. Think about it like washy. So it's like all your energy is washed out, and it's like wishy-washy, dull, insipid, boring. Four options: diminutive, piquant, headstrong, disinterested. So piquant means spicy, something very interesting, colorful. Opposite is dull. So wishy-washy, opposite is piquant. So headstrong is like more like stubborn, nothing to do with being stubborn. Disinterested means impartial, nothing to do with being partial or impartial. Wishy-washy sounds like, if you've never heard of this word before, you might think it's something like someone who is undecided, like, wishy-washy, who is like thinking about, should I do it this way or that way, who is not clear, who is undecided, but it's nothing to do with, being undecided. Wishy-washy means dull, insipid. Think about it as all the energy washed, so dull and insipid. So the opposite is like vigorous and something piquant or spicy. Exiguous. Exiguous means scarce or less. Copious, inherent, imminent, and perceptive. So so the opposite of exiguous would be copious or plentiful. Copious means something bountiful, plentiful. Exiguous sounds like something that's exiting, right? You might be tempted to think that the opposite is oncoming or imminent. Imminent means something that's about to happen, about to come. You might think that the opposite is exiguous, something like something that's going away, but that's not true. Inherent, something which is inherent, and exiguous is like something which you're giving away, or it might seem like it, but it isn't. Exiguous means scarce or very less, and the opposite of exiguous is copious. Picaresque. So picaresque means episodic or broken, which is not continuous. So picaresque means episodic, broken, which is not continuous. So the four options are unsightly, incessant, insipid, and impresario. So picaresque somehow sounds like picturesque. So the moment you look at picaresque, you may think it's like picturesque, means very scenic, beautiful. But that is picturesque, and it has nothing to do with picaresque. So take care not to fall into these traps. So you might think picaresque is like picturesque or scenic or beautiful, and you might be tempted to pick the opposite as unsightly or something that's not nice to be seen. But that's not true, okay? So unsightly ruled out. So impresario means a manager or a producer. Impresario has nothing to do with being impressive or trying to impress someone. Impresario is a manager or a producer. So the person who's producing a movie, for example, is an impresario, is someone you must try to impress, kind of. So impresario is a person, a manager, a producer, something like that. That's not the opposite of picaresque. So picaresque means episodic, broken. Opposite is continuous, incessant, or unbroken. So opposite of picaresque is incessant. Idyllic. Idyllic means rustic, out of this world, rural. So it's like the opposite of like an urban setting. Idyllic means something quaint, something rural, something like in a village. So the four options: burgle, scenic, popular, and noisy. Opposite of rural is urban, right? So burgle. Burgle means urban or city-like. The opposite of idyllic is burgle. So idyllic and scenic have a similar meaning, so it cannot be scenic. Can it be popular? Idyllic sounds like an idol, someone popular, but then they seem like they have similar meaning, so I would rule that out anyway. Idyllic means scenic, rural, something like that. So the opposite would be noisy. Yeah, well, urban setting is something that can be very sophisticated. It doesn't necessarily have to be noisy. So burgle means urban, so that's the most suited word. So idyllic is rural and burgle is urban. Censure. Four options: diminish, perceive, obscene, and applaud. To censure is to criticize or to debase someone. Opposite is to applaud. You criticize, opposite you applaud. So censure is very different from a censor. Censor is like the censor board of in India. They censor movies, right? They take off all the obscene scenes. So you might be tempted to pick the opposite of censure as obscene, but it's not obscene. To censure is to criticize and the opposite is to applaud. Deliquesce. 4 options: propagandize, expedite, eulogize, and reform. Deliquesce means to diminish or to fade. Deliquesce is to diminish or to fade. Opposite is to popularize or propagandize. Diminish or fade. Opposite is popularize or propagandize. So deliquesce is nothing to do with being like a delinquent, like a juvenile delinquent, someone who misbehaves and is put into reform or something. It's nothing to do with being delinquent. Deliquesce is to diminish and to fade. Opposite is to propagandize or to make it more popular. To eulogize is to praise. So opposite of deliquesce is propagandize. Ambiguous. 4 options: realistic, celebrated, unmotivated, unequivocal. So ambiguous means something that's not clear, something in which you have a doubt. So ambiguous is very different from ambitious. When you're ambitious, you want to achieve something, you have ambitions. But ambiguous means something that's not clear. So the opposite of something that's unclear is something for which you have clarity, right? So which word talks about clarity? Realistic, maybe we'll keep that option. Celebrated, it's nothing to do with being celebrated, not celebrated. Is it like clear or do you have a doubt? So celebrated is ruled out. Unmotivated, so ambiguous is nothing to do with motivation. So these 2 options are ruled out. Unequivocal, so equivocal means unclear and unequivocal means clear. It's a kind of tricky word, okay? Equivocal sounds like it's equal or something. Equivocal means something which is not clear. And unequivocal means something which is very clear. So unequivocal means clear and ambiguous means unclear. Temerity, 4 options: gravity, obliquity, camaraderie, diffidence. Temerity is daring or boldness. So temerity may sound like timidity. It's like sound like timid. It's nothing to do with being timid. Temerity means daring, boldness. And the opposite of that is diffidence or being shy or cowardice or pusillanimousness. So diffidence is very different from confidence or difference. Difference means being shy and not having confidence. Camaraderie is friendship. So temerity, nothing to do with friendship. And obliquity, so it's nothing to do with being oblique. Gravity means the seriousness of the situation, nothing to do with that. So temerity means bold and daring, opposite is being cowardly. Temerity, opposite is diffidence. Exigency. Exigency, 4 options: ataraxia, influx, emergency, and inundation. Exigency means seriousness, difficulty, urgency. Exigency is like the seriousness of the situation. Opposite is ataraxia or easiness. Ataraxia sounds like some disease or something, like anorexia or something. No, but ataraxia means ease, easiness. So opposite of exigency is ataraxia. Influx is like, when there's intake of something, like, something coming inside is influx. Exigency sounds like somebody is exiting, but it's nothing to do with exiting. Exigency means the seriousness, the urgency of the situation. Exigency is urgency. Remember it that way, okay? And the opposite is ataraxia, or something easy and something not so serious. Auxiliary, 4 options: principled, organic, spiked, honorary. Auxiliary means additional, secondary, or not fundamental. So there's primary and auxiliary. So some things are primary, important, and the next ones are auxiliary or not so important. So opposite of auxiliary is organic or essential. So when you think of organic, you only think of like organic food, organic vegetables, organic fruits, something that's grown in a natural way and without using chemicals or something, right? So organic also means essential. Organic means primary, important. That's another meaning of organic. So organic means primary and the opposite is auxiliary. So it's nothing to do with honorary. Honorary is like something is given in honor of someone, like you get an honorary doctorate from a university. Suppose there's a scientist who has done all these amazing things, and his university in which he did his undergrad, they call him and give him an honorary doctorate. That's honorary. Nothing to do with auxiliary or primary. So auxiliary means secondary, not important, and organic means primary or important. So that's what it means. Palpable. Palpable means credible, tangible. 4 options: dubious, concrete, squishy, argumentative. So dubious means incredible, unbelievable. Palpable means believable, credible, tangible. So don't confuse palpable with palpitating. Like, you've heard of palpitating a heart, right? So it's like something, don't think of it something as like squishy or spongy or something. And don't be tempted to pick concrete as the opposite. It's not squishy, it's not concrete, okay? So palpable means credible, believable. And the opposite is dubious or incredible. Disabuse. This is an interesting one. Disabuse means to enlighten or disillusion. Enlighten or disillusion. Rehabilitate, castigate, eulogize, and beguile. These are the 4 options. So don't confuse disabuse with the opposite of abuse, as in condemn or criticize. To abuse someone is to like criticize or condemn someone. And the opposite of abuse sounds like disabuse. Sounds like you praise someone. And so don't be tempted to pick the opposite as castigate or criticize. Or don't even think that disabuse somehow may mean something like abuse, and don't think that eulogize or praise is the opposite. Neither of these is anything to do with disabuse. Okay? So to beguile means to confuse or to mislead. So when you're beguiling someone, you're confusing them, misleading them. And disabuse means to enlighten, to give the right knowledge, disillusion. To enlighten someone is disabuse them. Disabuse means it's like negative of negative, so it's like a positive word. It's to enlighten someone. And the opposite is beguile or to confuse or mislead someone. So the next word in the list of antonyms is vicissitude. The 4 options are consonance, weightiness, ambivalence, and thoughtfulness. So vicissitude means the ambivalence of thought, means the swinging of something, to and fro, not necessarily thoughts, but as an example. So you can have vicissitude of feelings, vicissitude of seasons, or emotions or anything. Like sometimes, like when you, like one day you love your parents and the next day you hate them. So there's this vicissitude of emotions. And sometimes you feel like living in the US, and sometimes you feel like returning to your motherland, India. So it's like the vicissitude of thoughts. So this change of emotions, this swinging to and fro, that is vicissitude. It's not necessarily only with feelings and emotions. You can have like the vicissitude of like seasons. So vicissitude and ambivalence, they mean the same thing. This swinging to and fro. So the opposite of that is consonance, uniformity, or harmony. So that's what it means. Weightiness is like how important a particular matter is. Thoughtfulness is when you're thoughtful, pensive, that kind. So opposite of vicissitude is consonance. Decimate. 4 options: distribute, overwhelm, ensconce, exasperate. So decimate means to destroy, to diminish. Opposite is ensconce or establish. Opposite of decimate is ensconce. So don't be tempted to think that decimate is to create peace, and don't pick exasperate as the option. Decimate is to destroy, not to make peace. And so the opposite of tranquilize. So opposite of tranquilize would be like, to decimate. But then what I'm trying to say is decimate has nothing to do with like a decimal, okay? Deci is usually like something to do with the number 10. So deca means usually like something 10, or deci is like 1/10 of something. So but decimate is not to reduce it by 1/10 or make it 1/10 of something, but decimate is to completely destroy. So clandestine. Clandestine, 4 options: ornate, responsible, melancholy, and veracious. Clandestine means unfair, secretive, underhand. Something secretive. Okay, so opposite of clandestine is veracious, truthful, or fair. Clandestine has a negative connotation to it. It's something unfair, cunning, secretive. And opposite is veracious. Veracity means truth, so veracious means truthful. Clandestine sounds like a chandelier or a candle, so don't confuse it with a chandelier, a beautiful light made of crystals or something. So don't mistake clandestine for something ornate, okay? So responsible is not the opposite of being cunning. So melancholy is sad. So veracious is truthful, honest. That is the opposite of clandestine, which is cunning or secretive. Vainglorious. 4 options: fortuitous, unostentatious, phlegmatic, and scatterbrained. Vainglorious means boastful, proud. So the moment you see vain, it's something like, is vain means proud. Vainglorious means proud, boastful. Opposite is humble or unostentatious. Ostentatious also means like boastful, like show off kind of thing. The opposite is unostentatious or humble. Phlegmatic is slow, and scatterbrained is like an idiot. So don't be tempted to look at the vain part of vainglorious and mistake it to mean failure. So you tried to do something in vain means it was a failure. So don't look at vain and think it's something to do with failure. It's not to do with failure. And don't pick the opposite as fortuitous, because fortuitous means fruitful, successful. Don't think the vainglorious means failure, so the opposite must be successful. Vainglorious means boastful, proud, and the opposite is humble or unostentatious. Shroud. 4 options: unveil, praise, de-stress, overestimate. Shroud is to hide or conceal. Opposite is to unveil or expose. A veil is like, something you use to cover yourself, right? Unveil is to expose. Unveil. So shroud is something like, say, shrouded in mystery, means it's covered in mystery, wrapped in mystery, we don't know. Shroud is to cover, conceal. Unveil is to expose. So opposite of shroud is unveil. Troglodytic. Troglodytic means lonely and secluded. Troglodyte is something like a lonely person, you could say. Troglodytic is lonely, secluded. Opposite is neighborly. Neighborly means sociable. Troglodytic is nothing to do with size, so its opposite is not miniature. Scholarly, so it's nothing to do with stupidity or being scholarly. Troglodytic is nothing to do with travel. Troglodytic means lonely, and the opposite is neighborly or friendly. Fastigium. 4 options: nadir, appendix, envelope, and fruition. Fastigium means zenith or crescendo. So it's like the apex, the height of something. Zenith. Okay, fastigium, it might sound like, a part of a body, or like pterygium, or something like something in biology, but no. Fastigium means the height, the crescendo, the ultimate peak of something, pinnacle. And the opposite is nadir. So zenith and nadir. So fastigium is zenith and the opposite is nadir. Entreat. Entreat means to request, to woo someone. 4 options: condemn, impede, conquer, and spurn. So opposite is to spurn. Entreat is like, let's say a man is entreating a woman to marry him. Opposite is to spurn, repel. So opposite of entreat is spurn. Disingenuous. Disingenuous means cunning or crooked. So ingenuous means simple, honest. Disingenuous means cunning, crooked. So a lot of people get confused between that. So remember, genuine means real, honest, right? Ingenuous also means honest. It's kind of tricky, but disingenuous means dishonest, okay? So think about that. Opposite of that is honest or equitable. Equitable means honest, and that's the opposite of disingenuous. Poco curante. So poco curante means indifferent or careless. Opposite is careful or wise. So the 4 options: fatuous, savory, gingerly, or loquacious. Loquacious means talkative. Gingerly means careful or wise. Savory means sweet. Fatuous means stupid, foolish. Indisposed. Indisposed means sickly or unwell. So 4 options: inclined, salubrious, adventurous, or talented. Salubrious means nutritious, pleasant. So by looking at this, I would say indisposed opposite is salubrious. Yes, so that's the right one. Indisposed is nothing to do with inclined. There's this word called predisposed. So you have a predisposition towards something. That's like an inclination, but indisposed is nothing to do with that. Indisposed means you're sickly or unwell. Opposite is salubrious or nutritious or healthy. Fiasco means a failure or incomplete work. So fiasco means a debacle, disaster, failure. So the opposite we have nosegay, spectacle, fruition, or recession. Fruition means successful completion. So fiasco is failure, fruition is success. So that's how you look at the antonyms. Stolid. Stolid means stable, unemotional. And the 4 options: gaseous, mercurial, pusillanimous, responsible. So opposite of stolid is mercurial. Mercurial means, like mercury, it rises and up and down in temperature, right? It's very sharp, means it's highly reactive, and it's also very, with slight changes in temperature, it, reacts, right? That's why they use it in a thermometer. So mercurial means highly reactive, and one who gets angry fast, and who's kind of sharp-witted, that kind, and who's easily excitable. So opposite of mercurial is stolid. Pusillanimous means cowardly, and responsible, opposite would be irresponsible, but stolid is not irresponsible. Stolid is stable and emotional. Opposite is highly reactive, excitable, or mercurial. So solid is different from stolid. Okay, don't be tempted to pick gaseous. Squalid. Squalid means dull, dirty, insipid. 4 options: cathartic, distant, resplendent, and inherent. So opposite of squalid is bright, clean, resplendent, right? Resplendent means shiny, bright. Opposite is squalid or dull. Cathartic means, catharsis is like when you let go of all your built up emotions. Like, when you're very angry, all this frustration, stress, sometimes you sing it out and you kind of unwind, right? Sometimes you yell at someone and you scream, and or you go and beat up a sandbag or something, and all the emotions are gone, right? That's the catharsis. So distant. So squalid is nothing to do with near or far, so it's not distant. Inherent. So inherent or acquired externally, those are two different things, nothing to do with squalid. Resplendent is bright and clean. Squalid means dirty, so dull. Okay. Iconoclastic. 4 options: infamous, meteoric, sanctimonious, and heterodox. So let's assume you've never heard of the word iconoclastic before. So the moment you look at iconoclastic, what does it look like? Looks like an icon. I would be tempted to think that iconoclastic means famous, popular, like an icon. I would be tempted to think that way. What else could you possibly think iconoclastic would be? Iconoclastic may be something to do with a symbol, something that represents a symbol or something like an icon. I don't know. That's what you might be tempted to think if you don't know the meaning of iconoclastic. But iconoclastic means impious, irreverent, disrespectful. So think of it like, suppose there's some popular star or someone who's very arrogant. Okay, so that person is iconoclastic. So just to help you remember this word, think of some icon, okay, who is known to be like very arrogant and who is not very respectful to people. Well, I shouldn't probably name anyone, but then, think of like an icon who is known to be very rude and disrespectful. So that, use that person, okay, to remember this word. Iconoclastic means being disrespectful, irreverent. And the opposite of that is sanctimonious or sacred. So it's not only about being irreverent or disrespectful, it's also about being impious or impure. So iconoclastic means something which is not pure or disrespectful, something like that. It has a negative connotation to it, okay, not pure. So opposite is sacred or sanctimonious, right? So that's how you pick the opposite. Sequestered. Sequestered means withdrawn, restrained. So the moment you look at sequestered, if you don't know the meaning, you might think it's something to do with like sequins, something used to decorate, like your clothes or something, sequins. Probably sequestered means ornate, embellish, decorated, something like that. You might be tempted to think that way. And you might be tempted to pick this, among these 4 options: charming, unadorned, officious, formidable. You might be tempted to pick unadorned or plain as the opposite of sequestered, but that's not true. Sequestered has nothing to do with sequins or decorations, okay? Sequestered means withdrawn, restrained. And so what is the opposite of being withdrawn or restrained? Officious. Officious means meddlesome or interfering. Officious is nothing to do with an office. It means you're just interfering in everybody's life, interfering in something. So opposite of sequestered is officious. Saturnine. Saturnine means gloomy or sad. So Saturn, in Sanskrit they call it Shani, right? Saturn is a planet that is known to have a negative influence on people. Like in astrology, we talk about Shani or Saturn, which is like inauspicious. Saturnine means gloomy and sad, okay? So when you think of Saturnine, think about Shani, okay? Saturn is Shani, okay? So Saturnine means gloomy, sad, unhappy, that kind. And among the 4 options, sanguine, proximate, famous, intellectual. So opposite is sanguine or cheerful. Sanguine means, think of it like, singing a song or something. Sanguine means cheerful, okay? Saturnine means sad. Opposite is sanguine or cheerful. Overwhelm. Overwhelm means to inundate, swamp, overpower, or submerge. So for example, when the water in the river rises, the bridge is inundated, like the river is inundated, flooded. So that causes the bridge to, be submerged, right? So the bridge was inundated. the bridge is inundated, so that kind. Or it can be used in different ways, like when you flood someone with too much information, you inundate them, so you overwhelm them. So the opposite of overwhelm is, so I mean these four options: appraise, exsiccate, inundate, and liberate. So overwhelm means to inundate, and the opposite of that would be exsiccate or deplete or diminish. So opposite of overwhelm is exsiccate, that is to diminish. So you see X over here, it means like something is going away, so it's diminishing, okay? Opposite of overwhelm is exsiccate. Idiosyncratic, four options: intellectual, hackneyed, salubrious, and meritocratic. Idiosyncratic means subtle, distinctive, personal. It's the opposite of, like, hackneyed or trite or commonplace. It's not something that's common. Idiosyncratic. Suppose, like say for example, Steve Jobs, used to wear those black turtlenecks. That was kind of idiosyncratic. It was unique to his personality. And let's say somebody has a particular way of dressing, like say Charlie Chaplin. His dress and his mustache, it was idiosyncratic. So, to him. So, four options: intellectual, hackneyed, salubrious, and meritocratic. So opposite is hackneyed or commonplace. Hackneyed means it's so common, trite, cliched. So idiosyncratic, nothing to do with intellectual or stupidity, nothing to do with merit or the lack of merit. Salubrious is nutritious or pleasant. So idiosyncratic, nothing to do with pleasant or unpleasant. Idiosyncratic means personal, like something very distinctive, and the opposite is something commonplace, hackneyed. So meteoric, four options: cushioned, supine, confused, and abstract. Meteoric means spectacular, rapid, like the meteoric rise. Like when you see a meteor flashing, going through across the sky, what does it look like? Does it go very slowly, or does it go fast, or it's usually it traverses very fast. Meteor, you know, heard of these meteor showers and stuff, right? So meteor goes really fast in space. So meteoric means like really rapid, fast, like a meteor. Opposite is supine or lazy or lethargic. So meteoric is nothing to do with clarity, so confused is ruled out. Abstract, the opposite of abstract is like concrete, real. Meteoric is nothing to do with real or abstract. Cushioned means like protected. Meteoric seems like unprotected. No, that doesn't work either. Meteoric means rapid, fast, and opposite is supine or lazy. So this brings us to the end of this video about antonyms, and I hope you found it useful. So, as I said, it's not just about listing out these, antonyms and the words and their options and, just picking the antonyms. I think I talked about how you would go about picking the antonyms. Even if you're coming across the word for the first time, you probably have to use your own, unique techniques, funny ways of remembering words and identifying the roots of the words and making sure you don't fall in traps. It's about identifying words and their antonyms. Even if you're not familiar with the word, you should be able to guess from the four options and pick the antonyms. So practice a lot, take a lot of online tests and a lot of mock tests and work out a lot of questions. The only way is to expand your vocabulary, solve a lot of crossword puzzles, and make sure you're familiar with these words, and watch my video about confusing words and make sure you get those words clear in your head, because if you're confused about those words, you probably won't be able to guess their meanings or their antonyms. So wish you good luck in your GRE and GMAT and TOEFL exams. I hope you found this useful. Thank you.